The chairperson's have to send apologies for today. Can we have a nomination for a chairperson? And can we have a vote on that, please?
Yeah.
Show of hands for it, Paul. Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried.
Thank you very much and good afternoon, everyone. Just a reminder before we start the meeting in full, this scrutiny committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders. The Council's standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times and members should conduct themselves accordingly. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting, and Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. Images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council. Okay, thank you for that. And can I confirm if there's apologies, please?
Yes, there is. Apologies from Councillor Fowler, Councillor Cladley and Councillor Townsend.
Thank you. Is there any others from the room? No, thank you. And is there any declarations of interest for this meeting? Thank you. And if I can go over the minutes of the previous meeting, is there any points that people want to raise on either page? No, move through records. Okay. Yeah, seconded. Is everyone happy with that? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, so that's the minutes approved. And if we can go on to this substantive report now, yes, in inspections outcomes report 23/24. Can I ask who's introducing it? Government member yourself, Sarah? Government member, please. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for the invitation to be with you today, and I'm really pleased to present our inspections outcome report. As the report states, 25 schools have been inspected since May 22, and it's pleasing that whilst 2 schools were identified as requiring review, none are now in special measures. It's worth noting that Isil and Gwentley, working with our educational team, provided bespoke wraparound support and were able to move at pace and quickly address the concerns raised by Estin. And on review, Estin were extremely pleased with the rapid progress that was made. 11 schools were asked to provide 1 or more case studies that reflect best or innovative practice. Looking across Wales, whilst I'm aware that Monmouthshire equally has no schools of special measures, I still believe this is fairly unique. No authorities nationally have had so many requests for case studies. I appreciate the examples that have been provided, but please go and look on the Estin website for yourselves and at other case studies and look at the write-ups that reflect outstanding practice or excellent leadership being specifically noted in our schools. We have so much to be proud of. I truly believe the consistent feature that we have in our schools is that of outstanding leadership. We have excellent head teachers, many of whom are homegrown, developing MQTs who started our Newport schools. I visit many schools in Newport, and what I see is a strong community of teachers who work well together, all of whom are passionate about teaching and importantly, teaching and learning and wanting to truly make a difference in our children's lives in raising aspiration and attainment. These schools are being ably led by our educational team, who, where I go, I hear nothing but praise for. The open, honest conversations and importantly, the support that's given to our schools is exemplary. I feel really proud to be part of that team. Finally, the report reflects on the recommendations that have been identified in our schools, and each of these are learning points and we see as opportunities to improve. For example, there's a theme that in a number of schools Welsh provision could be extended. This, I'm aware, is a national concern as post-COVID, schools have to focus on basic oracy skills in English when children return to school from lockdown. And this continues to be a concern in many of our schools. Basic oracy is a very real worry. However, as an LA, we've recognised Welsh provision as a theme and are prioritising support in our schools this year to ensure a consistent approach is adopted.
The officers of banking wants to come in or speak to questions?
Is there any specific one to say? I'm sure members have put in a regular report, but happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant, thank you. And open up to the room then for questions.
Just a comment from me to say how well the education is in Newport.
Well, it's really too.
I look very proud of that. Tommy down.
The Gwentley Primary School is doing really well now, and Andrew Shepherd, I do believe they're doing much better, so that's really good.
In fact, Councillor Jenkins, the progress they're making is strong in the areas where we've been working alongside them, and we're really proud of the progress they've made.
And we've indicated to Eston that we are ready for them to come back to take that review piece in partnership with the local authority, because we have a level of confidence that the school will have satisfactorily met those recommendations.
I found it declaring interest because the chair of the Strategic Planning School was inspected. But I'm not a question on that. The question I want is in regards to the one the Welsh school which is in review. Is that because it's a new school and there's only two year groups in at the moment? I think
It's not in the basically where they went to glowing inspection. Yes, degree level, it's not in review.
That was Matt Gwentley that you talked about. Matt Gwentley was inspecting the summer term and had a very, very strong inspection outcome. Ysgol Gavin Gwent Iscoed went into review in 2022, but came out within 12 months, again having met those recommendations in what was a short period of time. And we were very impressed with how they built leadership capacity, because they've got a strong ethos of building capacity from within, and we know the challenges around Welsh medium education recruitment. Well, they overcome that by building capacity within. They then been able to build the leadership capacity of that school, having just come out of COVID, and make rapid progress within.
when have they actually come out of
They came out in
the review?
So they came out in July 23. So if they went in May 22, it was just over a year. And actually, sometimes there's a lag between Eston being able to come and do the monitoring visit, but the school made incredibly fast progress with the support of the local authority. And what I was using pay reference to was the school full, and it was a fully grown secondary school at Welsh School.
I can, Chair. Do we have any need for fluent Welsh teachers?
Yes.
Where would they apply? I just have someone in mind that is a fluent Welsh teacher working over in Bristol, desperate to come back to me.
Outside of the meeting, we can let you know of the vacancies, but the education workforce for the Welsh medium schools is always, looking for new recruits. And
She's a Newport girl. She went to Bristol and she's desperate to come back. Primary.
And there's lots of Welsh government initiatives to bring Welsh speaking teachers from English medium schools back into the Welsh system. So there's actual programs that you can engage with to allow you then to teach in a Welsh school where we need to build capacity.
And there's another pivotal issue that Councillor Harvey raises there around recruitment, is because we've got a growing school with Ysgol Gymraeg Nantgwenllyn. So that means they've got to recruit more staff for the future as more pupils are admitted into the school. So great news for our families in Newport to have greater access to Welsh media provision.
I've been a Newport girl. She just wants to come home.
And strong Welsh medium provision.
Yes.
Councillor Watkins, did you have any questions?
Yes, I got another question. According to the report, that you compare deprived areas like for like in Wales.
And they don't look at the framework, doesn't consider social deprivation. It looks at standards, and it starts with the child, and it starts with what the school know themselves well. So what school undertakes their own self-evaluation, they identify what they need to improve and what is going well, but it's all around helping the child to improve. So it's about, they wouldn't look at the demographic would be for the school to reflect. The framework doesn't adjust for the social demographic.
So Eston actually looks at the school.
The school knowing itself well, yes, it doesn't compare school with school.
However, when the school if the school has got high free school meals, for instance, and disadvantaged learners, learners that might be disadvantaged from poverty, Esther would expect through looking at through the framework in terms of leadership and provision, they would expect to see that there was adequate provision to support learners that might be disadvantaged by poverty.
But you compare that, say, schools in the same area. How does that compare in Wales, that is? But do you look at England?
No. Oh, because Esther will only look at the Welsh system.
The inspection framework in England and Wales are very, very different.
The other question is, what is your thoughts on the pounds per student that Wales is getting compared with the pounds per student that England is getting? What sort of restrictions or benefits?
And Councillor Watts, I could only talk to you about the funding that's available in Newport, and I know some statistical information around Wales. I don't have a reference point for the English model to be able to give you an answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to know that there's been a lot of in the news of the last couple of months regarding how schools are modelled and what, like, if they're good, very good, need further work. And they were on about changing the way that the wording was done.
Oh,
Now, is that in Wales or is just
no, Councillor Davis. So Estyn removed those judgments, single words that we took them out of the system a long time ago. So it's lovely to see, isn't it, that the Welsh Inspectorate is ahead of the game, and that was done to be able to provide broad feedback to schools without them focusing on one word, which could have often labelled schools inappropriately. I think that the way the reports are fed back now through the whole reporting commentary system gives schools a better idea of what to focus on next.
I think the other thing that they've done in Wales, which is helpful for parents, because I know the conversation in England has been about the single judgment words were helpful for families. We have the standard inspection report, which, as Sarah said, the commentary is there to support schools to self-evaluate, to support them in their own self-evaluation. They do a separate report for parents, which is user-friendly and condensed into parental accessible language. So we have the standard report, which professionals and interested members of the public can access, but there's a specific parental report which synthesises everything down into simpler language for parents to access.
What we've also liked about removing those single word judgments is if a school is in a follow-up category, because any school can go into a difficult chapter and we're here to support them. It almost suggests that there's no good in that school, and actually every school, regardless of the chapter it might be going through, for whatever reason, can still cite good practice. So thank goodness those labels have gone.
Yeah, definitely. You're right, I think it is a case of it makes things, the school look bad. And it isn't. So it's the single wording is, to me, was it was unprofessional to me. One more question I wanted to ask as well. It's been a couple of years now since we've come out of COVID. Are you still seeing any effects from that, and what sort of effects are you seeing?
Attendance, I think we're recovering. So Newport's attendance is in line with the national average, which is fantastic. We've got really good systems and processes in Newport, and we just need to hold our nerve. And we're asking communities to support us with pupil attendance naturally. We see many of the babies that were perhaps isolated in their very young years that haven't got the oracy skills in the same way that other children have gone into schools. That's quite evident. There was also perhaps a delay in identifying children that might have had additional learning needs at a very young age. We've tried to put programmes in place to make sure that we can do that. So for instance, our teams have been working with Flying Stars, with non-maintained nurseries, to have an earlier input into families' lives, to be able to make sure that by the time children get to school, teachers around them understand their needs and what provision they can put in place. But there are certainly the aftermath of COVID is absolutely there. And even for young people who perhaps missed out on year 5 and year 6 in school, but didn't get to go to those lovely residential trips. They missed out on the social aspect of playing with friends. They missed out on key years of practicing handwriting. There's so many implications there where our teachers are doing a marvellous job in identifying what their own children need to improve and putting the strategies in place. But it's very tough out there.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I didn't think of the other thing. I just look at it as attendance wise. I didn't think of the other implications, like we say, with auditory skills and not being able to pick up children with extra learning needs.
There's developmental delays, lots of young children coming into nursery schools wanting toilet trained.
Yeah.
So provision has had to be adapted in order to meet their needs at the point they're coming into school, rather than traditionally where you would assume they would have come in pretty good.
That's a bit like an oxymoron, because they're home more with the parents. You'd think they would be drier quicker, as opposed to being still in that piece. It blew my mind a bit, that when I got real honest. But 2 years of a child's education, you're not going to fix in 6 weeks.
And there's also that impetus, isn't it, to go to school. If you're going into school, maybe there's not that impetus to push a difficult period in your development through.
Yeah.
Like, can I ask as well on the same subject? I used to see like children that were already in school, say middle years, years sort of 6, 7, 8, where you'd think they would be glad to return to school. Are you seeing a problem with that sort of age group as well? What sort of problems is it causing?
Right across the board, I mean, at all age groups, but I suppose it's dented families and children's confidence in socialising where they spent a long time, not just out of school, but also in bubbles and away from other friends. And some families have found it, and then children find it very difficult to reintegrate.
Yeah.
And we've got a project there which looks at emotional school-based avoidance.
Yeah.
To try and support children and their families in a different type of way, where they've got perhaps emotional and mental health problems that are creating that block to actually make the first steps into schools or to consistently be in school. So it's up to all of us to make sure that we are managing the provision differently to be able to support anybody post-COVID, really.
Got quite shocked as well that the lens of mental health issues in schools, even in primary schools. I expected my schools to sort of make one or two, but I was really, really shocked at the extent that mental health is impacting children. And I think it wasn't until I thought about it, and I thought, you've got children at home who listen to their parents, who are worried about things, and they're taking those things on board.
And what we've tried to do, Councillor Davis, as well, is we've made sure that we've tried to accommodate those needs of children. So all of our primary schools have been trained in ELSA work, which is the educational psychologists have trained the teaching assistants to support children in addressing their emotional health issues. They can also be referred to school-based counselling, so that's been extended to year 5 and 6 as well as secondary school children as well. And there's also the whole school approach to mental emotional health, which goes right from the head teacher, every member of the education workforce, and all the children. It's got to be a whole school approach, hasn't it, to support everybody and their families. We've done a lot of work on community focused schools as well, because there's parents that didn't feel naturally welcome into schools and that had bad experience themselves as parents. The community focused schools project is all about engaging with parents to come back in and be supported with lots of their own needs. We're even doing some great classes around through multiply funding to support financial help for well-being. So doing a budgeting, looking at cost of living and things as well. We're doing a cost of living roadshow through schools. We've been able to access through Council Hardy actually some ideas to get white goods for families that are in need, to be able to look at how you develop uniform swap shops, etc. So it's about supporting the whole family on all different types of issues.
Yeah, I've heard about the multiply, the one about the
Yeah.
We had a bit of a government debate on one of those schools because there was only school that hadn't actually applied for it. We just could, as governors, we just couldn't understand why they didn't want to support that solution. But it was literally then talked with the governors meeting last week and they changed their mind and have decided, because I think it is vastly important that that some parents will need help with budgeting, will need help with being able to cook, a basic cheap meal. So yeah, I was pleased about that, and I have to say, it's brilliant to see how well our schools are doing. I'm happy with what you said with regards to children's mental health, because unless the mental health of the head and the teachers are helped and sustained, they can't help the children.
And that's part of that whole school approach, because it considers the staff as well as the learners and their families and any wider stakeholder groups. So it's far-reaching in terms of the work that they're doing around.
And 2 years being a lot away, as I said, you're not going to fix that in a heartbeat, do you? It takes a long time, especially when they're little children. 2 years is forever for them. So
But I'd like to say thanks as well for all of
yes,
brilliant to see.
That's right. I don't see any others. I've got a couple myself. First one, how is or can the local authority better support schools in improving the outcomes of pupils eligible for free school meals?
Well, really pleased to know that the Newport City Council have now got a poverty strategy. It's going to be going to cabinet, and so it is a specific strategy where every single service area will have forward planning in place through their service plans to ensure that we're mitigating the effects of poverty. But in education, of course, it's quite mature in its approach to supporting disadvantaged learners. So I can reel off a number of programs at the moment. Obviously, we got universal rollout of free school meals. Newport's cabinet took a decision very early on to support that rollout earlier than the rest of Wales. So our children in Newport benefited from those free school meals much sooner. So that would have helped families and what they had available left to spend in their family home. We run specific evidence-based projects. A good example is RADI, which is Raising Advantage of Young Disadvantaged Learners. We operate that in both primary and secondary schools, and it looks at a range of interventions and teaching methodologies which support disadvantaged learners, and they work. We've got some good examples of a school who had poor outcomes with FSM children and has completely changed around to have the best outcomes in Newport because they've implemented the right programme. So we know that it works, and so that encourages other schools to come forward. We've talked about the cost of living roadshows, we've talked about the community focused schools approach, the people development group grant, of course. So in Newport, there's £18 million which is distributed for PDG, that's People Deprivation Grant, and EIG, which is the Education Improvement Grant, to support the target learners that are disadvantaged, to give them extra catch-up and intervention and support. So for instance, it might be around accelerated reader. That's a good example of a whole cluster project where every school in the cluster develops accelerated readers. So by the time they get to the secondary school, they're all on an equal playing field to be able to access the curriculum. A good example. You'll find that there are some instances of trips and visits that are supplemented by schools through PDG, and that's helpful because, again, what we know is that affluent families who've exposed their children, their families to lots of different cultural experiences, that needs to be replicated for those children that might not have that support at home, because there's lots of informal learning that engages them.
And that would be the same with music provision as well. Lots of schools use the PTG grant to ensure equal access to music tuition for all learners, and also targeting those who are affected by poverty, so they have quality of access to the culture.
So the good example of the music fund is that for an FSM learner that couldn't afford to pay for music lessons, they would have all the music lessons paid for, the instrument and the music exams as well.
I think a really important component of this is that we expect our schools to take a self-evaluative approach to ensure that they are reducing the gap, that, you know, whether it's exam outcomes or progress in reading or attendance, you are comparatively looking at which children as to whether your FSM children, you can still use that as a measure, even though you get preschool meals, to ensure that you are reducing that gap. What are you doing as a school to reduce that gap? And that's really, really key to what we're doing.
If you read some of the ST inspection reports, it is clear across the city that standards of progress of all learners is good. So that includes those affected by poverty, those from global majority backgrounds, those who are new to English, the range that the provision being private schools is bespoke to individual learners, which allows all learners to make good progress. And that is something we can see across the city.
You noted about the Ruddy programme. Is that Newport only, or is that something you've got coming
It
across?
was first developed in 10 hamlets and is nationwide. Certainly as a region we've used it, but I think it's been particularly successful in Newport.
And we've got one school who was a private school for the right project. And if you look at their end of key their examination outcomes, the difference between the attainment of those children eligible for free school meals and those not is similar. And they probably, when they compare to the similar schools across Wales, their outcomes for their EFSM learners are probably the best.
Thank you. I know it was partially mentioned part of my next question, but what specific strategies are being developed to strengthen self-evaluation processes in schools and ensuring that they lead to actionable insights?
So as part, we asked our colleagues in the ES, the school improvement to take a review of self-evaluation and school improvement planning processes last year. That was limited to secondary schools because of Action Short Strike. This year we are doing a similar project, but we're bringing in all of the schools' development plans. Primary, we're bringing in all their monitoring and evaluation calendars and systems, and we're doing a whole desktop exercise of evaluating the impact of their work and that alignment, which is very important, between what their self-evaluation is telling them and how they then take that their school improvement plan to drive the right priorities for improvement for their school. So there will be a report that will be developed for us then to build professional learning for individual targeted schools and more broadly across the local authority if that is deemed necessary. We had a meeting yesterday, interestingly, with our school improvement group, who volunteered to put together a group of head teachers a package of professional learning bespoke to Newport schools on behalf of the local authority, which was really powerful because it comes from your peers, it has greater impact. Every year we meet with all our secondary schools in October and November, and we have what we call professional discussions where we sign off in partnership with the governing bodies, the schools' development plans. But again, it's an alignment between what does your self-evaluation say and how then you drive those improvements through your school improvement planning. But more importantly, what are you doing differently in the classroom to improve outcomes for learners and to ensure all learners make progress? So it's about that impact. You know, this is what you say you're going to do, but how will you measure that it's making that difference? And how will governing bodies be able to hold you to account that you have been successful in achieving these priorities by looking at those outcomes that you said you would achieve? We also hold professional discussions with our primary schools. Most years we manage to get through all of our 46 primaries, and we do that on a priority basis. So those schools who would be causing us concern potentially, or potentially emerging concerns in schools, schools where head teachers request that they come early into the cycle, schools that we know potentially will be inspected, although we're in a new inspection cycle, so it's difficult to predict that at the moment until things settle down. So we have those meetings with all our schools, and our school improvement partners are expected to quality assure the schools and improvement planning processes and provide us with a commentary on how effective those are, and where they're not effective, that's where we would intervene.
And I think it's just the other part which you mentioned about school governors, and I know a lot of us are school governors ourselves, but because of the dynamics of them, do you believe that there may be issues of some governors understanding the self-evaluation, or being able to challenge correctly and being able to make those improvements?
I think each governing body is so very, very different. I think it's very difficult to say a blanket across the local authority. However, there is governor training that's directed obviously from the EAS that specifically looks at the role of governors in school improvement planning and their ability to hold leaders to account against the priorities they set. And that's why the clarity of the success criteria in any school improvement plan is really important, because as a governor, as a lay person, you need clarity of what the school is trying to achieve so you can hold them to account for achieving it. And we're pushing that very, very much in our SD professional discussions. Chairs of governors, as many of you in the room are, also come to those school professional discussion meetings, and that's our expectation, that the chair of governors can't be somebody else, because you are ultimately responsible for that improvement plan as a governor. So it's about aligning that with governance. We're also hoping to be sending a briefing paper soon to all governors in Newport to begin to develop cluster governor training sessions, where we would look at bespoke training for clusters that is identified by clusters and supported by the local authority in partnership with schools. So it's not a done-to model, it's about the cluster identifying where they feel training as a collective would be supportive of their governing body, sharing of good practice between schools within the cluster on a governor level, and then also providing bespoke professional learning that is identified by those governing bodies.
We also do, when we're doing the SDP meetings, so the school professional discussion around your development plan, the chair of governors is invited, and we just keep things very simple in terms of the fact that with self-evaluation, can it overcomplicate it?
Yes.
Just this simple statement, show me.
Yeah.
And actually all I know is what led you to those school improvement priorities? What was the self-evaluation activity? What did it show you? What did you find out? And what are you going to do next? And then just repeat the cycle of improvement. Did it close the gap? Was the action correct? Is there impact? So we model that in the professional discussions with chairs of governors and encourage them to go back to the governing body just to keep that simple approach.
So I was going to say, it's because obviously when you're doing self-evaluation, you can go down the whole rabbit hole of things there. And how do we make sure that it is simplified, especially from the head teacher, the leadership, side of things in schools, to make sure governors understand, but also where it needs to be parents to understand that things are happening and things like that when they see it and see what changes.
And the other part of it as well is the head teacher's report is critical. We've done a big piece of work on revising the guidelines for head teacher report. That's important for our head teachers as well, to make sure that
Clarity of messages.
clarity of message. So in there, for instance, it should explain what the attendance has been like in school, what the exclusions have been like, what self-evaluation activity has taken place. So we've been ensuring by quality assuring those head teachers reports that it's when you're given information on attendance, you don't just give them one term. You need to give the attendance to date information, because when you look at it in terms of attendance in isolation, it doesn't give you the information you need to set, because what we know is that in summer terms, sometimes attendance slips. We need to look back at September, we need to look at the previous year. So the information in the head teacher's report is critical for governors to be able to see the big picture, and that supports the governing body's ability to self-evaluate as well.
And we get head teacher reports haven't provided governors with the right information, or have not been clear or overly complex, that has been challenged, because governors are very busy people, they volunteer, they have not got time to access reams of paper, videos, links in documentation. So we're saying this is the guidance, keep it simple but succinct, but make sure they have the right data to be able to hold you to account.
Thank you. The next question is on to that about the leadership side, and it's how will schools address leadership capacity issues, ensuring leaders can effectively manage and improve different areas of responsibility?
Again, I think through our inspection reports are very clear that leadership is a strength. I think leadership capacity in Newport is a strength of the local authority, it has been for some time. So there's that investment in professional learning and opportunities to develop leadership from the very beginnings of a person's career, but more importantly, looking at our middle leaders and ensuring they have access to the right professional learning, mentoring and coaching, because they are the leaders of the future. And we've been very fortunate to grow that leadership capacity in our schools. It's not to say that will always be the case, and I'm sure that there are, particularly in secondary school recruitments at head teacher level, we need, we've been fortunate, we've grown our own in Newport, and many of you will have experienced the positivity of that. But I think it's also looking beyond that, so networking. So we've always had a new to Newport head teacher network. We are now having a bespoke secondary new to Newport head teacher network. We're having a bespoke primary and secondary deputy head teacher network to build that capacity and involve them in the work of the local authority, so that they are well placed to make the next steps of their career.
And that's about facilitating gaps in portfolios, because you can be a deputy head responsible for pastoral work, can't you? And then you might have another deputy head that's responsible for school improvements.
Yeah.
And those deputy heads might not have lots of information about finance. When they come together in the network, we talk about the gaps and we support the gaps. We might talk about the strategic implications of managing a school budget, what the big picture things around it. So it enables us to get to know the deputy heads, because we have to see the head teachers more than anything. So it's good for us to be able to see those who's in the system. And I think it's just important that we all participate in those up and coming head teachers' professional learning. So it's a win-win for everybody, because it helps us with our succession planning in the future.
Thank you. Next one is what role can external partnerships play in supporting schools struggling with pupil outcomes, particularly in socioeconomically disadvantaged areas?
First one I'd cite is we've got a Million Mentors project, which is supporting secondary schools across the city. And Million Mentors is about gathering together volunteers from any walk of life that can be inspirational to young people, and perhaps they're missing that inspiration and engagement. So we support that ourselves through education services. So a number of us have become trained mentors to go and work with an assigned young person and to talk to them about career aspirations and what we did to be able to get to the positions we did. That we came from, quite mixed backgrounds, and what our revision techniques were and what we did.
And it's that broadening of the industries and the commerce that is in Newport, bringing those in, so that the businesses that we want to recruit to in the future, those businesses that are impacting and influencing our young people. And as Sarah's just said, it's not about background, it's about aspiration, ambition, and plotting up that pathway to a coaching model with those young people.
that they can achieve their aspirations. Our partners are critical in education to be able to support us. So, for instance, the reason we work with the Police Crime and Commissioner's Office on the mini police is because that not only does it support community cohesion and the respect for the policing communities, but it also has been really inspirational for children to be able to see there's a brilliant progression within the police force. The reason we use, we have a Welsh and Education Forum, and one of our focuses is if you go to a Welsh medium school, if you don't carry on using your language, it's a bit like use it or lose it, because you can lose your confidence. And we know we've got a gap in education workforce. So one of our key partners is Colin Gwent. And we've got the person in charge of Welsh language provision at Colin Gwent. And he sits with us and he hears all these things. And he's gone specifically to Iscod to work with young people so that he can encourage them to be play workers. They can pick up then when they're old enough the work in play schemes in our Welsh medium primary schools. So they're earning extra money and developing confidence. And in the future then, if they wanted to be teaching assistants or going to a career with teaching, they've got the ability to do it. So it's helping everybody in the system. Newport Live are another brilliant example of a partner. So they are commissioned in to support our young people through a project called Aspire. And they give work experience and accredited training for everything that goes around theatre work, cameras, lighting, hospitality, gym instruction work. So those young people can gain accreditation, they can get lifeguarding work on the weekends. That supports their career aspirations and career progressions basically. So there's so many examples. I would say our partnership work is a real strength.
You know my feeling on that is not everybody is academically minded and they can't put it from the head to the paper. That doesn't mean they're not good at anything.
No,
It just means they can't express it properly in paper. There's so many kids, especially from my area, where there's a big, massive wave of deprivation, and there's some really bright sparks in there. Just because they can't, they could do it.
Learning pathways that best suits the needs.
Yes.
Definitely. And in addition, I think there's parents, every parent that wants to help their children.
Of course they do.
But sometimes they don't know how to help them get from A to B.
Yeah.
And our partners can help facilitate that and give everybody a leg up, and they're just critical to us. So we enjoy working with partners and we reap the rewards throughout the system.
For example, with the British Achievement Centre, there's a lot of money stuff in it. It's actually crucial for the support that they need. And to they might not be, forgive the statement, but book smart type thing, but hands-on, getting out and really doing educational things and really brightens up their day. They really want to get involved.
And I think a good example of how that has helped the British Achievement Centre, the British Achievement Centre, as you can see from the Report 1 pops and special measures, it is now one of the best practice case studies at Estin, and the work of the bridge is being used in Estin training sessions because it's so highly regarded. So that's about creating that provision to meet those needs, those learners, so that everybody benefits from that partnership working, as has been key to that.
The most important thing, I think, for everybody, for all of us as counsellors, everything, every child is worth something. Just because they can't write it down or they can't express themselves properly, they get told like whatever, doesn't mean they should be just tossed aside. They are all worth their time.
Things that people want to come in.
Yes, I've got two further questions. Number of schools have been in special measures. What is NCC doing to support, to monitor schools to ensure that they don't go in special measures, and again on new ones going in special measures, and what support is being given?
Well, the first thing is when a school comes into the category, we never leave that school alone, because there's the after school's been highly supported for a long period of time. It'd be wrong for us just to walk away. We've got to make sure there's sustainability in their newly acquired strengths. So we continue to work with them through what we call a team around the school. So we'll meet with them on a half-termly basis, and we'll go through their attendance, their exclusions, what they're doing in terms of self-evaluation, what we're seeing in the books, and pupils progressing well. So we'll go through all of those things, and we'll carry on that generally for about 9 months to a year. But not forgetting that we don't leave any of our schools alone, as we go through the professional development discussions. But we do a careful assessment of, is the school ready to depart from a team around the school? Because you can have a school at any point that requires support, and it doesn't mean they're a school that causes concern. It just means at this particular point, we need a bit extra. And our school improvement partners that are assigned to every single school and do 6 call visits a year are also our eyes and ears in supporting the school and looking at various things. So when they go into school for those 6 days, they've got an itinerary, things they've got to look at, and they report back to us on any additional support the school may need.
And then we have tiers of support. So there's a universal offer that saves for 6 days. There's a targeted offer, which then would have increased school improvement offers, but also additionality in maybe partnering your school up with another school for a key piece of work. So identifying what area needs to improve, and then the intensive work would be significantly more for the improvement offers, but far more intensive support from a partner school that would be identified to support that school through all levels of leadership and interclassroom practice. So there's 3 tiered levels of support. So those schools that would be in the highest level of support would have those half-term team around the schools. Those who are in the target support with some extra time and some bespoke work for key aspects, because as Sarah said, there might just be one thing not working well rather than a more significant widespread issue in the school. So we would have that bespoke partner school to come in and work alongside the leadership in that school to support them to see different new practices and to investigate what the barriers are and then to break those barriers down. So, and you go into the team out of school for any reason. You can be in there because you're in a such a category, you can be in there because there are emerging concerns. It might be some head teachers have asked to have a school team around the school, rather team around the school meeting, because they just want that external perspective and additionality to support for a period of time. And we've been able to step back from that when we have the leader and the governing body that's fairly confident that that school is ready to.
You've also got your natural teamwork, right? So if you think about all the teams in education service, you've got HR, as business partners, you've got health and safety, got education welfare, got ALN, so that's just named a couple. There's going to be a list of schools that require higher level supported attendance for EWOs, but don't require, are so amazing at additional learning needs transformation and the provision they've got in place. They don't need any support there. There might be somebody that needs more support with HR because they've had an awful lot of sickness absence and some problems. So they're having high levels, but they might not be having high level support in another area. Perhaps behaviour is absolutely sound. So what we also do is we map all those together. So we keep visit records so we can see which schools are offering the highest level of support and are we using our resources correctly? Because we could be perhaps over supporting and it's not necessary. Or we could be under supporting and we could see in this school from all different angles need support, but actually we're spending too much time over there. I mean, so we've got quite a strategic oversight, if you like, of all the support that goes into school and where we need to face it.
So we're using a range of intelligence from school improvement partners to our own teams, and that's been mapping that across the support.
And we know our schools well.
Yeah,
you know, that's the other thing that helps.
Yeah, other one, Sarah, you mentioned about good practice in schools, where some schools have started at base level, or possibly below the base level, a exceptional learning over a period of time. So where and when do you share that practice.
Well, that's about matching. So when we look at school improvement partners, for instance, in Newport, we've taken the approach this year that over 50% of our schools will be supported by a Newport head teacher. So that gives local knowledge. But what's really important, so we start there, and it's really important if a school is coming out of a category, you don't want to put those into partnership with somebody who's been well established for a long time and is on a different trajectory, because that can actually be overwhelming for the staff, because it's got to be a shared language. So when you've got schools emerging, you want those to be supported by schools who've been on that improvement journey, who've lived that lived experience. So we're careful with matching school improvement partners, partner schools, and also suggesting informal support relationships between schools who have been on similar trajectories that are a little bit ahead of that, because it can be intimidating for a school, as you say, who are emerging from a very low baseline, to go to see a school that has been on a trajectory of high performance for 4 or 5 years, because that gap is just insurmountable for them at that time. So we're really careful about where we target support, who provides the support, and how we support the school on that journey. So it's that regular touching base as well, make sure everything's okay. And you know, all of us in education visit our schools regularly. We've all got clusters of schools that we go out and see outside of our portfolio work, and put it that way.
Yeah, I think that the cluster working which you mentioned in your report will improve that, will support it.
I think we need to look broad for clusters, and I think this, the way we've been talking recently, is about the cluster is about progression in learning. The traditional secondary school cluster, then that's about progression in learning, supporting that learner to progress over time, and so that points of transition are smooth and we don't see a decline in learner progress. But there are other ways we can work with
Yes, but
clusters.
the learner progress in Dunkross School, they have a number of primary schools that the students coming from different schools are going to be different levels. So I'm wondering whether by bringing it together as a cluster, you're going to, or you, hopefully you will get improved standards to the top level, then there would be a transition.
That's why we've done things like accelerated reading clusters, to make sure that every school, primary school that gets to a secondary school is at the best they can possibly be, and common reading schemes, etc. And so the secondary school's got a really healthy platform to build upon. And there's also
Common approaches to teaching and learning. So the way that children are taught mathematics, for instance, there's a commonality. The way that children access their digital learning thing through Hub is common across all of those. So those parts of transition are smoother, because they're not really learning skills or learning to do things in a different way. But we've been talking recently about a changing approach, in that clusters don't always have to be that traditional cluster. It could be a cluster of primary schools, for example, of similar demographic in the local authority, who have similar challenges, who need to come together on a regular basis to drive improvement. It could be a secondary school cluster, secondary schools coming together to work on something. So I think there are ways that we can use that cluster approach in different ways to drive improvement for different reasons.
There'll be different terminology in the future, so we'll call the geographical clusters will remain as clusters, but we'll probably have horizontal working groups, we'll call them, where they'll find common goals or common themes to work on across the east and west of Newport.
So one's a vertical cluster, the one we know now, and the other be horizontal.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just make a point, Chair, I've had the education department in my school because we needed them pretty much. I mean, it was difficult to begin with because it was like, oh my God, what now? But it was all scaled right back to the bare brick, and then we rebuilt. It was absolutely phenomenal. You know, it was worth his job, but for us, it was worth its weight in gold, because we found all the hidden bodies dug them up, threw them out, and started again.
And it's only communication that works, isn't it?
It is.
And
It is.
really on plain speaking around the
Absolutely.
issues and going back to basics.
Yeah.
And what we have,
You
we
didn't
managed
come in to hit us round the head with a level once. You came in to assist. I think that makes a big difference.
But what we have in our leaders in Newport is high levels of trust,
Yes.
and we are, so that's something we value greatly.
Give mutual trust.
I mean, I've witnessed with one of the schools I'm a governor on as well, definitely. Next one I've got is, what plans are in place to expand and further develop Welsh medium education, especially considering long-term trends in language?
That's part of the approved Welsh Education Strategic Plan. So there is a plan to develop further school places over time. There is nothing to report in this meeting committee today, but the commitment which has been signed off by Cabinet is going to be made.
The reason I'm linking with that as well is the looking at things like the FA said was coming to Newport in 2027, looking at things like we've had issues of English being used in the playground. How do we link in that? Obviously, we're learning in Welsh in the classroom. How do we integrate that into the playground and outside of the school? And I know there is certain clubs and stuff that have been set up to try and get around that. The other, I'm not going to say concern, but kind of interest maybe of linking forward about how those that are going through Welsh medium school are able to attend work experience, etc., in the Welsh language, and as well as apprenticeships moving on. So if they want to move on away from the schools, how are we building, or how are we at the moment able to attend to this increasing of Welsh language speakers or those going to Welsh language schools to be able to come out the other side, if that makes sense in that regard?
Going back to the playground issue, and what we know is that Newport City Council Youth Service and Play Provision has developed extra opportunities. Number one, the Youth Service have commissioned the Earth to provide youth services and youth clubs in a Welsh medium school. So to have a Welsh speaking youth provision is unique, and that encourages the young people to be able to enjoy social speak and use Welsh language throughout the school day. That's a gift. That is an amazing provision. The play provision in holidays enables our Welsh medium children outside of school to be able to access all of that wonderful youth support. It's amazing. So that's been put in place across the city because we share Welsh in education strategic goals through the WESP. In terms of the next steps of first of all, I think work experience isn't like it was. So not all young people have to have Welsh, placement. And so it's not the same expectation that there was many years ago. But it's by using the Welsh Education Forum, like I said, around colleague Gwent being part of the picture, as well as our A-level offer across the city. So we don't rely on one school to provide A-level provision. Because if you have subject areas where there are small numbers of learners, it doesn't become good value for money. So a modern foreign language is a good example that you might have one A-level course operating in the west of the city and one in the east of the city. And that means that we can have the broadest menu of A-level activity and BTECs for our young people. So we operate in that fashion. That means there's an A-level pathway for Welsh speakers. There is, and obviously within the Gwent Discoid as well. For vocational subjects, that is managed by colleague Gwent, and that's why they specifically have a head of Welsh language learning provision. And their job is to, for instance, if you look at the childcare courses, they have to ensure there is a Welsh language stream that's built upon there. Because our sixth forms can't be all things to all people. We tend to focus on A-level provision and subject. Welsh Government's view is when you look at post-16 funding, you put the learner central and you don't duplicate resources. It would be silly. There would be no value for money in College Went and Newport schools providing exactly the same service. That would just confuse the learner, and that's where it should be. It's about extending as many opportunities as possible for the learner. So College Went would be the partner in developing those subject areas. But I do see your point. There would be limited opportunities in Newport, although they grow in for those work experience placements. Yeah. However, I would say for enough active partners around the table, with our Welsh language officer, with mental health training, with the earth, to be able to find any shortage, I'm sure. So I think there's an opportunity to ask if we need.
That's what I was thinking with the One Newport partnerships and that there's enough people hopefully around to find places, even if they shadowed or anything else like that. There'll be places. So just,
you know,
hopefully we'll just
we've got good partners who will go above and beyond.
Thank you. Last one from me, unless there's anything from anyone else or any comments so far. No, okay, I can't see anything online. So within the report itself, it's just something from yourselves about what you deem as the priorities or the challenges that have come from the report, and is there anything that you'd like to highlight to us in particular?
I think the challenge in terms of the reports, we keep a spreadsheet, we keep our eye on the board in terms of what are the most frequent recommendations. There's part of that which is around independence in learning, which we are providing bespoke support for schools with. It is quite bespoke depending on the school itself, but one of the common emerging themes is clearly that we need to improve the development of Welsh language, RC in particular. Last week we had a head teachers meeting where 57 of our schools, our school head teachers came and did a presentation on the way forward of how they could access professional learning around Welsh second language. But it was abundantly clear that even if you haven't been through an inspection, you may still have some concerns about your capacity for Welsh second language. This is the menu of support that's available to you. We don't wait for an external inspector to give us recommendations. We should be so familiar with our schools before they come that we know what the areas for development are. And we're going to do our own thematic review in the summer of Welsh literacy across Newport schools. So we not just look at those 25 languages we've inspected, we know what the city looks like. And we'll also be able to look at what gains have been made by those schools who have the recommendations around Welsh language and how have they improved since.
As well as looking at those schools who take up the professional learning offer as compared to those schools who don't, but use other mechanisms to drive improvement around it. So in a way, we're also looking at, is the professional learning offer that we've offered having the impact we've expected, as well as compared to the school who might have taken another trajectory in terms of those capacity around learning best practice.
And whilst those are based around the SB framework, there are other areas of education that there are perceived shortfalls in informational support that we plan for those as well. So by knowing our schools well, it means that we can address the issues through the service plan, team plans, etc. So we're staying ahead of the game. We also celebrate the strengths of our schools within our schools, as we did last week. And I think one of the things that's probably not in there is the sheer strength of ICT and digital skills and provision in Newport. It is absolutely outstanding. But at the moment, we're collecting best practice case studies for the local authority, which is reflected in all the schools in Newport. And there are 13 best practice case studies, which I'd like you to see.
Which sits outside the best practice case studies, clearly the excellent.
So it's our identification, and that links back to ALN transformation. There's a whole list, and we'll take through it now, but we are very much aware of our strengths in our areas.
We've done a review of progress and stamps across all schools, and we've been able to identify schools who are at the early stages of having impact and those who have significant impact, and it's very strikes a strong picture.
Thank you.
I just want to rectify a mistake I made, the growth area. I handwrote my notes on Sunday and I've very quickly typed them up this morning and I made a massive error. I said it's worth noting that Ysgol Gwentley actually meant Ysgol Yscoed in my opening statement in regard to school that was needed improvement, and I do apologise for that error. I realised as soon as Councillor Watkins said, I thought, I said the wrong name, but I do apologise. But I do apologise to Ysgol Gwentley, it wasn't intended.
Thank you. I'm sure that will be confirmed on the record as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I believe that's it, unless any other questions, queries, or anything. No, I think it's a comment that I think we share as councillors, the fact that it's, you know, every time that we have you as witnesses in front of us, it's always good to have that knowledge that you know the schools and you can pinpoint. If we just mention, like, you know, even items of the school, you'd probably be able to name the school. So it's really positive to have that regard, to have that at all levels. So thank you very much again for coming today. I think when you leave, I think we're just going to have a little discussion there, just about any recommendations or any comments that we should put forward to the report. But thank you for coming. Thank you.
Have you on your or something? It feels everything. I am absolutely frozen, and I don't want to feel it.
I would say it's normally hint on a Friday to try and switch off the heat.
Yeah, I don't change it back, honestly. Chamber was better.
If it's helpful to, do you want me to run through what I've got to start with? I haven't got any specific recommendations, but I have noticed committees comment about being pleased with the progress shown in the report and that you can temper the report as it is. But is there anything else you want me to capture specifically? Were you happy with
It was
I think it's just basically watching the challenges like the Welsh language and things and just following through as it comes along. I know that there'll be, it's part of strategies and that, and also the poverty report, the poverty strategy as well, about how that links into education.
Yeah.
Just to monitor that moving forward. But other than that, I think,
See how it affects it.
yeah.
absolutely? And I just to let you know, I'm pretty sure if I look at the board work programme, the Welsh in Education Strategic Plan report is coming to committee anyway in March. So we'll have a chance to look at that as well. How would you like me to note the continuing of monitoring?
Just the committee will be interested to monitor the
Progress?
yeah, ongoing progress is probably a good term. As it's integrated within
And then integrated with the report.
yeah.
What I'll do, Chair, then, I think that's more of an action for me. As I see reports where Welsh language in education is relevant, I will forward those to committee. So, like, you'll see the Welsh in education report anyway, but things like the anti-poverty strategic plan must come into an overview committee, and when that comes, I'll be able to forward that to committee as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Lovely. I've got those noted, Chair. Do you want me to jump ahead and just go through the updates for Scrutiny reports? While I'm chatting away. So if we look at the action sheet, there's still a few outstanding, but I have chased them and I know that the work's being done on them. We should have those relatively soon. There's no outcome sheet because we haven't had any recommendations for a while, but that's fine. The board work programme, our next meeting would be for mid-year reports for education, funny enough. The date on that is actually wrong. It's right in your diaries, it's wrong on the board work programme. It will be the 26th of November. And then the second round of social services is the 10th of December. So I do apologise for the typo in the programme, but I promise they're right on the website and they're right in diaries. And that's it. Everything updated for me. Unless there's any questions or anything that anyone needs to be helped with.
I think that's all covered. So thank you very much for everyone for coming, and I close the meeting at 14:09. Thank you very much all.